When we talk about oversharing, the first thing to understand is awareness before expression. Most people believe communication begins when words come out of their mouth, but actually communication begins much earlier, when awareness arises. If there is no awareness, words become nothing more than noise. You can see this everywhere. People speak endlessly, pour out stories, emotions, opinions, and yet very little of it carries weight. Why? Because expression is happening without awareness. It is like pouring water without first checking whether the vessel is empty or already full. The urge to speak, to explain, to tell the world everything that is happening inside you comes from a restlessness. The mind is like a monkey. It wants to jump from branch to branch, thought to thought, word to word. And when you give in to this urge, you begin to overshare. You reveal things not because they are valuable, but simply because silence feels unbearable. But if you bring awareness before you express, suddenly the quality of your speech changes. You don't just talk, you deliver something that has meaning, something that has life in it. Think of it like this: if you walk into a room filled with people, most are trying to talk, trying to impress, trying to fill the air with words. But the one who is truly aware, who does not rush into expression, stands out without saying a word. Their presence itself communicates something powerful. This is the strength of awareness before expression. Your words carry power only when they rise from a ground of awareness, not from insecurity or fear of silence. Oversharing often comes from a deep human need, the need to be understood. We want to be seen, to be validated, to be accepted. But in this eagerness, we give away too much of ourselves. We explain every detail, we narrate every story, we expose every vulnerability, hoping that someone will finally see us. But the truth is, when you are spilling endlessly, people stop listening. The more you pour, the less value it carries. Awareness teaches you to recognize this. You begin to see that not every thought that passes through your mind deserves to be spoken. Not every feeling inside your heart needs to be displayed. Awareness creates discrimination. The ability to know what should be shared, what should be held back, and what should simply dissolve in silence. Imagine standing by a river. If you scoop up water with your hands, you cannot carry much. But if you build a container, the same water becomes useful. It can quench thirst, it can nurture life. Words are like this. Without awareness, they are like water slipping through your fingers, spilling everywhere, wasted. With awareness, they become contained, directed, purposeful. Such words can heal, inspire, and transform. But how to bring awareness before expression? The simplest way is to create space between thought and speech. Right now, most people think and immediately the mouth is moving. There is no gap, no pause. That is why so much of what is said turns into regret later. If you can learn to pause, just for a breath, just for a moment, you allow awareness to enter. In that gap, you can ask, is this needed? Will this bring clarity or will it add noise? If it brings clarity, speak it. If it adds noise, let it pass. This small act transforms the way you communicate. When you cultivate awareness, even your silence becomes a form of communication. People begin to feel your presence. They sense that you are not absent, not distracted, but fully here. From such awareness, when you finally choose to speak, your words have weight. They don't need to be many. Even a few will be enough because they come from a place of clarity. It is important to understand that silence is not suppression. Suppression is when you desperately want to speak but you hold it back forcefully. That is not awareness, that is resistance. Awareness is different. When you are aware, you see that speaking is not necessary, and so you naturally remain silent. The silence that comes from awareness is effortless, not forced. And in that effortless silence, you are more powerful than any amount of oversharing could make you. In life, every moment does not demand expression. If you are constantly narrating, constantly explaining, you are missing the essence of living. To simply observe, to simply be aware, without the compulsion to turn everything into words, is to taste life in its purest form. When awareness comes first, expression becomes beautiful. When expression comes first, awareness is lost and words become meaningless. So if you truly want to stop oversharing, don't start with the mouth, start with awareness. Let every word that comes out of you pass through the filter of necessity and clarity. Speak only what is required, only what adds value, only what carries truth. The rest let it dissolve in silence. In this way, your words will no longer be scattered fragments of thought, but precise expressions of awareness. And when your words are born of awareness, people will not just hear you, they will feel you. Because, in the end, it is not about how much you share, but how deeply your sharing touches. And depth comes only when awareness walks before expression. Silence is often misunderstood. People think silence means nothing is happening, nothing is being said, nothing is being communicated. But silence is not absence, it is presence in its purest form. When you are silent, you are not empty. You are more alive, more aware, more connected than in those moments when you are speaking endlessly. The trouble is, most people cannot bear silence. The moment there is a pause, the mind becomes restless, the tongue wants to move, words rush out, not because they are needed, but because the absence of noise feels uncomfortable. But if you can embrace silence, if you can learn to stay with it without panic, you will discover that silence is the deepest form of communication. When you observe carefully, you will see that those who are constantly talking may say 1,000 things, but very little lingers in your mind. Yet, someone who sits quietly, someone whose presence rests in silence, can impact you without speaking a word. Their silence communicates more than words ever could. This is the power of silence. It has weight, it has substance, it has clarity. And when you learn to value silence, oversharing naturally falls away. You no longer feel the need to explain every detail of your life, because you realize that your presence itself is speaking louder than your words. Most of us think that silence creates distance, but in reality, silence creates depth. When you are silent, you begin to see beyond the surface of life. You begin to feel the subtle movements around you, the emotions of people, the intentions behind words, the atmosphere of a space. Talking too much blinds you to these subtleties. In trying to describe everything, you miss the essence. But in silence, you begin to perceive what is usually hidden. It is like standing by a still lake. When the surface is calm, you can see right to the bottom. But when the water is disturbed, when it is full of ripples, you see nothing clearly. Your mind is like that. Silence brings stillness, and stillness brings clarity. In silence, you also conserve energy. Every word you speak is energy spent. When you pour out words without measure, when you overshare endlessly, you feel drained not because you have spoken truth, but because you have wasted energy on noise. Silence is like holding a treasure within. It keeps you centered, it preserves your vitality, and when you finally choose to speak, your words emerge with power. That is why sometimes just a single line from a silent person can touch more deeply than a long speech from someone who cannot stop talking. The strength of those words comes from silence, from the stillness that nourished them. But silence is not something you do. It is something you allow. You cannot force silence. If you simply try to remain quiet on the surface while the mind is screaming inside, that is not true silence, that is suppression. Real silence is when the mind itself begins to rest, when you are no longer restless, when you are comfortable with stillness. This kind of silence is alive. In this silence, even your breath feels more vivid, your senses become sharper, your awareness deepens. It is not a dead silence, but a living silence, rich with presence. When you cultivate silence, you also learn patience. You no longer rush to answer, rush to explain, rush to fill every gap. You begin to enjoy the space between words. And in those spaces, you will find wisdom. Silence teaches you that not every moment demands a reaction, not every question demands an answer, not every situation requires your commentary. Sometimes the greatest power lies in simply being there, fully present, without adding anything. This transforms the way you live and relate to people. Others begin to sense something stable in you, something grounded, something they can trust, not because you spoke volumes, but because your silence carries weight. Life itself speaks most through silence. The sunrise does not shout to announce its arrival, yet it transforms the whole sky. A flower does not declare its fragrance, yet you cannot ignore its presence. The ocean does not explain its depth, yet when you stand before it, you feel it. In the same way, when you embrace silence, you do not need to overshare for people to understand you. Your very being communicates more than your words ever could. So the power of silence is not in withholding words out of fear or restraint, but in realizing that silence is already a complete expression. It is a language without words, yet it speaks to the deepest parts of life. And when you learn to value silence, your words become precious, your presence becomes impactful, and your energy becomes preserved. Silence is not emptiness, it is fullness. It is not weakness, it is strength. It is not a lack of communication, it is communication of the highest order. And once you taste the richness of silence, you will see how small and unnecessary oversharing really is. Because in the end, when you rest in silence, you carry the greatest power to be present without needing to be noisy. Observe more, speak less. It sounds simple, but it is perhaps one of the most profound shifts you can bring into your life. Most people believe that talking is the way to connect, that constant explanation is the way to be understood, that sharing every thought is the way to stay relevant. But if you watch carefully, the ones who truly understand life are not the ones who are endlessly speaking, but the ones who are watching. They are present with a kind of silent awareness that allows them to see what others miss. Observation reveals far more about life than words ever could. When you observe without the rush to speak, you begin to notice subtleties that usually escape you. The way someone moves their hands, the hesitation in their voice, the flicker in their eyes. These are not things people openly tell you, yet they speak volumes about what is going on inside them. Oversharing blinds you to these details because you are too busy expressing yourself, filling every space with your own noise. But if you simply stay quiet and watch, life starts whispering truths to you. Silence sharpens your perception, and observation opens doors to understanding that speech can never unlock. There is a simple truth: when you speak, you only repeat what you already know. But when you observe, you open yourself to something new. Most people do not grow because they are too busy repeating themselves. They talk about their opinions, their problems, their experiences, over and over again. It is like playing the same song on a loop. You cannot hear anything else. But when you step back, when you stop speaking for a while and just watch, you begin to learn. You learn not only about others, but also about yourself. You notice the patterns of your thoughts, the way your emotions rise and fall, the way you react without awareness. This observation brings a kind of clarity that no amount of talking can bring. If you sit silently in a group, at first people may not understand you. They may even think you are disinterested. But gradually they will sense something. They will realize you are listening in a way most people never do. They will feel your attention, your presence. And when you finally choose to speak, your words will carry weight, because they are not rushed, not scattered, not born out of compulsion. They are born out of observation. One line spoken from clarity is more powerful than 1,000 words spoken from restlessness. Observation also saves you from unnecessary entanglements. Oversharing often pulls you into conflicts, judgments, and misunderstandings. The more you reveal, the more material you give for others to interpret, twist, or misuse. But when you observe silently, you remain free. You can see the situation for what it is without being trapped in it. You can understand people without exposing yourself unnecessarily. This is not about hiding, it is about being wise. You do not throw your inner world at everyone you meet. You keep it guarded, not out of fear, but out of respect for its depth. Think of nature. A tree does not constantly announce its growth. It simply stands silently observing the sun, the wind, the rain. Yet in its silence, it grows strong, it offers shade, it bears fruit. Its presence is enough. Similarly, when you observe more and speak less, your presence begins to do the talking. People will be drawn not to your endless stories, but to the stillness and depth they feel around you. But observation requires patience. It requires you to resist the temptation of immediate reaction. Most people cannot wait. The moment they hear something, they rush to respond, to defend, to prove, to assert. In this rush, they miss the essence of what is being said. But if you simply hold back for a moment, if you observe not only the words, but also the silence between the words, you will understand more than what is being spoken. True listening is observation, not just of sound, but of silence. When you observe life, you begin to see that every person is revealing themselves constantly. Not through what they say, but through what they don't say. Their body language, their pauses, their choices, these are louder than their words. To catch this, you must be silent. You must let go of your urge to fill the air. Oversharing may make you feel temporarily relieved, but it blinds you to the deeper truths happening around you. Silent observation makes you wise because it gives you the gift of seeing clearly without distortion. So observe more and speak less. This is not about becoming mute, it is about becoming conscious. Speak when it is necessary, when it adds value, when it carries clarity. The rest of the time, let your silence do the work. In silence, you will learn more, grow more, and connect more deeply than words could ever achieve. Because in the end, it is not the one who speaks the most who understands life, but the one who observes it. Oversharing is not just about words, it is about energy. Every time you speak unnecessarily, every time you pour out pieces of your life without awareness, you are spending energy. Just like money, energy must be spent wisely. If you throw money in all directions without thought, you will soon be empty-handed. The same happens with your inner energy. When you scatter it through endless talking, through giving away every detail of your life, you are left drained, exhausted, and vulnerable. But when you learn to conserve it through silence and observation, that same energy becomes a source of strength, clarity, and influence. If you pay attention, you will see that after a long session of oversharing, you feel lighter for a moment, but soon a kind of emptiness arises. It is as if you gave away too much of yourself. People rarely realize this, but speaking consumes more than breath. It consumes mental clarity, emotional balance, and inner stability. Words are not free. They carry pieces of you with them. If you constantly hand these pieces to the world, what will remain for yourself? This is why many people feel restless after sharing too much. Their energy has leaked out in all directions. On the other hand, think of those who guard their energy carefully. They do not speak unnecessarily, they do not expose every detail of their inner life. Instead, they remain measured, silent, observant. When they do speak, their words carry gravity. This gravity comes not from rehearsed wisdom, but from preserved energy. Their silence stores power, and that power is felt the moment they open their mouth. Such people leave a mark, not because they said more, but because they said less with more energy behind it. Energy is life. How you spend it decides the quality of your experience. When you are constantly engaged in oversharing, you are scattering your life force. You may not see it immediately, but over time you begin to feel depleted. Your focus weakens, your emotions feel unstable, and your ability to influence others fades. But when you conserve your energy, it begins to gather within you. It builds presence. People sense it even without you saying a word. Have you noticed that some people can walk into a room silently and still shift the atmosphere? That is not magic. It is conserved energy manifesting as presence. Oversharing is like opening every window and door of your home to the street. Everyone walking by can enter, take something, or simply disturb your peace. In the name of openness, you have made yourself defenseless. But conserving energy is like knowing when to open the door and when to keep it closed. You do not let every passerby walk into your sacred space. You allow only what is needed, only what strengthens, not what drains. This is not about building walls of fear, but about creating boundaries of wisdom. You may think speaking more makes you stronger, more visible, more connected. But in truth, the more you give away without awareness, the weaker you become. The strongest tree is not the one with scattered roots, but the one whose roots grow deep and hold its energy firmly in the soil. Similarly, when your energy is scattered in all directions, you cannot stand strong. But when it is gathered within you, you become unshakable. Silence is the most natural way to conserve energy. When you remain silent, you are not suppressing. You are simply allowing your energy to rest within you instead of leaking through words. This is why silence often feels refreshing. Even a few moments of true silence can recharge you more than hours of meaningless conversation. And in this silence, your observation sharpens, your awareness deepens, and your energy becomes dense, like a seed that holds the power of an entire tree within it. When you learn to conserve energy, your words become more valuable. You don't need to speak 100 sentences to make a point. One sentence will be enough. Your presence will amplify it. This is how true influence works. Influence is not about how much you say, it is about how much of yourself is alive in what you say. If your energy is scattered, your words will be empty. If your energy is conserved, your words will carry life. So the art of not oversharing is really the art of valuing your energy. Before you speak, ask yourself, is this worth spending my energy on? Is this necessary, or is it just habit? If it adds no real value, keep it in silence. Slowly you will realize that by conserving energy, you feel stronger, calmer, and more present. And people around you will begin to notice something about you. Your presence itself speaks, even before your words arrive. Because in the end, the one who learns to hold their energy will always have more strength than the one who throws it away in every direction.